What's up YouTube, Capital G here talking about Thunder Dragons in this video, and I am so pleased and excited to say that it looks like the archetype has finally started to break through and make a significant impact when it comes to the OCG's metagame. This is really awesome, and it's not just because I personally think that the archetype is extremely balanced and well designed, but honestly just having something new in their meta, because you guys know, if you've kept up with the OCG, it seems like they habitually just kind of live through tier 0 format after tier 0 format. Right now, even though Hornet Drones did go to 1, Sky Strikers have kind of like a death grip in the OCG, and they're by far the best deck in the format. Now, there are some other players, some other high tier decks like Alter Guys, and there's actually a weird like hero version of Goki over there that's starting to become really popular. But when Soul Fusion was first released a couple of weeks ago, it wasn't looking all that great, and there are definitely some archetypes that I believe in Soul Fusion Konami has competitive aspirations for. One like, one of them would obviously be Thunder Dragons. I mean, they've revamped an old archetype that really was borderline not even an archetype. They gave it a whole bunch of cards, some fusion monsters, a fusion spell, a whole bunch of other utility cards. It just so happens that they randomly get a Link monster in Kiminari Summer Vacation that I'm not exactly sure was designed for them, but greatly benefits them and is also released in the same set. You also have the Orphagel archetype. That's part of the World Legacy storyline. Konami has been a little wishy-washy with those archetypes. Some of them, like Crawlers, just aren't there, and then some of them, like World Chalice, end up being good enough to win a YCS. And then I think it's a little early to talk about the Dino Wrestlers because they just don't have as many cards as the other archetypes, but they're Go's archetypes, so maybe they'll eventually get there. But anyways, the archetype that I was most excited about of the three, and really of all the archetypes in Soul Fusion, was Thunder Dragons, because I just looked at it on paper and I think that this is kind of the best way to design an archetype. Like, if you look at Thunder Dragons and the way that this deck is, not only did Konami kind of give us some amazing boss monsters, right? These are boss monsters that have, well, one of them has disruption, the other one is ridiculously difficult to kill because it uses its graveyard as a way of protecting itself. At the same time, it can actually trigger your other guys. A lot of these Thunder Dragon cards have floating effects, whether they're banished or they leave the field to go to the graveyard. And best of all, even though the old Thunder Dragon was never a card that you saw used all that much, historically it was used in like Shadows and other gimmicky decks like Exodia, it was a card that it still had potential to still be used today. And I like the fact that Konami took an archetype of old, which again really wasn't that much of an archetype, and they said, you know, we're going to make sure that the old school Thunder Dragon can still work with all of these new cards. And it's really interesting because there are two builds that I want to show you, and both of them max out on the original Thunder Dragon. And for those of you who don't know, this fucking card is like 15 years old. So this is not a card that should be seeing a lot of play, but to me, that's really good card design when you have an archetype that is that old and Konami's still making the old cards feel just as good and relevant in today's game, you know, a decade and a half later. So there were actually a couple of tournaments over the weekend. One of them, a Thunder Dragon build, actually got 6th place, which let me go ahead and show you guys that. This was a tournament that was almost 70 players, so it would, you know, equate to maybe like a small European regional or a very, very small North American regional, which I think is still fine. And then because you know, over there in Japan, they love their like their team tournaments. There was a team tournament which I believe had about 103 players, and between the 2nd place team and the 3rd place team, I think that there were 3 players who were playing Thunder Dragons. And I think there were teams of 3, so that's not a terrible number. If you're talking about the top 9 players and 3 of them are actually using Thunder Dragons, I think that that's pretty legitimate, especially again when you have to break through the vice grip hold that Sky Striker Ace Ray has on their formats. And I think one of the cool things about this archetype that people are going to start realizing is Gold Sarcophagus is just absolutely ridiculous in this deck. Not only do you get one of your monsters, but all your Thunder Dragons, well, not the original Thunder Dragon, but all your new Thunder Dragons immediately float the second that you activate this card, and then a couple of turns later, you're still going to be able to get, you know, one of your Thunder Dragon cards to your hand. So this card is essentially a +1 that, you know, makes the deck inherently faster. You can run a Lord Darkness, which is really good in this deck. It'd be so nice if if Max C in the OCG, if Max C was actually like a dark card, because then you'd be able to banish that. But this is another card that lets you dig deeper into your deck, and then at the same time potentially let you activate some of your Thunder Dragon cards. It's amazing how like Called by the Grave is just, man, it's used in every single deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! It seems like, and really cool. There are basically two different builds of the Thunder Dragon. So this is kind of like a Chaosy Dragon build, where this one's running the white and dark dragons, and obviously you can summon these guys on the field. You can put them, well, if you happen to use them for like link summoning, then basically they float. They do banish your Thunder Dragons from the graveyard, which will allow them to float even harder, essentially. I think maybe he could have possibly ran a rank 4 in case you do get both of these on the field at the same time, but I guess with all the link monsters, maybe the extra deck was like a little too clogged. And then you look at this other build. This was one that was used used during the tag tournament, and it doesn't use the white or the white or dark dragons at all. This one actually uses a whole bunch of instant fusions, which, you know, I think instant fusion can still be a pretty decent card. Thousand Eyes Restrict is simple removal. You're going to run Link Karibo in this deck anyways, because the Thunder Dragon or the Origin Thunder Dragon is a level 1. Go into Link Karibo, basically float, get another copy of itself. So if you're running Link Karibo for Origin, then you might as well just run it for Thousand Eyes Restrict with the instant fusion play. It seems that Impermanence is just by far the most popular trap in the OCG, but I think when you look at Thunder Dragons, right, like maybe they're not the most powerful archetype ever. I don't think that they have anything that is just ridiculously overwhelming. There is no turn 1 extra link or, you know, any Droll and Lock plus Reincarnation combo that automatically wins you the duel, but they just have a lot of fundamentally solid pieces. The fact that Avian is a built-in Monster Reborn for the archetype is pretty cool. You can activate Bolt during either player's turn. This is a card that replaces itself, and at the same time, since it is something that basically replaces itself, it gives you that Thunder activation in your hand. You don't have to worry about going neg, and then you can use that to go into your fusions rather easily. At the same time, if you do get the big Thunder Dragon Lord on the field, it gives you spot removal during your opponent's turn, and you can obviously use something like the Origin as like another way of being able to activate it. I look at the boss monsters in this archetype, and I think that these are well-designed cards. You have Super Bolt, which is ridiculously easy to get on the field and offers a little bit of protection. And then you have Thunder Dragon Lord, which I don't think that it's difficult to get on the field. I would say when it comes to like the simplicity of summoning it, I don't know, on a scale of like 1 to 10, I'd give it like a 5. It's like in that happy medium of you will summon it, but I wouldn't say it's the simplest thing to summon. This is a card that gives you disruption, and it's 3,200 attack. So it's like, it's a straight up beat that can do a little bit of work. But I love the fact that this is just an archetype that it kind of feels old school, right? Like, let's just say an archetype like Thunder Dragon, maybe something like Goki was just, you know, Rematch got banned, and a couple of other decks in the TCG ended up getting hit. Like, I feel like if this is one of your top 5 best decks in the game, I feel like you have an incredibly healthy meta, because as I said before, this is not a deck that's ever going to have a break my board or I did this in my first turn, so you automatically lose. I mean, yes, there will be like really strong turn 1 plays, especially if we ever get Needle Fiber in the TCG, but there will be turn 1 plays where maybe you have a Summer Vacation plus like a Thunder Dragon Lord and a Super Bolt Thunder Dragon, which is a very strong, it's a very strong opening. If you back that with an Impermanence, it can be incredibly strong, but it's not like that player just automatically wins. It's not like you still can't just dark hole that field and then, you know, actually play the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! I do find it a little interesting that we're not really seeing any Blackluster Soldiers ran in these main decks. It is an explosive card that can obviously get you an OTK, especially when you combine it with these big-ass fusion monsters, but at the same time, and I think it's because a lot of the hand traps in Yu-Gi-Oh! That we play, none of them are light and dark, so if you ever open up with, you know, a hand of like Impermanence plus a hand trap plus maybe something like Called by the Grave, it's like, yeah, BLS can definitely be a dead card in the early game, and it's kind of like a mid to late game card. I think it's awesome that Solar Battery Man is such a fantastic, I knew that this card was going to be good in this archetype, just the fact that it can send any of your dudes to the graveyard, and then you have Avian that's a Monster Reborn, and you get the token as well. You can convert the token into a Link Karibo, or you can convert the token for fodder for Link summoning your Kiminari Summer Vacation. So I'm really happy the fact that everything is coming together for Thunder Dragons, and it's looking like, I don't know, maybe they can be a around a top 5-ish. Well, in the TCG, again, the format's a little different, so maybe like a top 10 deck in the format, because I think that that would be awesome, man. And I really like the way that this deck actually duels. It's very old school, very beatdown oriented, doesn't do anything that's overwhelmingly powerful, and I think that this should translate to the TCG, because outside of Needle Fiber, I don't think that there's one thing that we're missing all that much. Yes, we don't have Maxi, but that's a hand trap. We can just fill that in with other cards. And then the last thing I want to talk about is the fact that, you know, you don't really need that much extra deck space in this archetype, or when you run this archetype, because it's just a couple of fusions and everything else. Well, Link Karibo is probably like staple. Same thing with Summer Vacation. But outside of maybe like 7 slots, the rest is just kind of up to you. And those can be anything from instant fusion targets to, you saw in the other version where there was just, you know, Cherry City, where he's running like Kagari and a whole bunch of other stuff to just cherries his opponent. So I'm definitely liking that aspect too. Reminds me a little bit of Altergeist, where like Link Karibo and Hexdia are the only things you have to run in Altergeist, and everything else is just, you know, player preference at that point. But you guys let me know what you think. Do you guys believe that Thunder Dragons can be a legitimate contender? And by that, I mean top 6 deck or something like that in the TCG. With us getting another round of banless hits probably by the time that we get Soul Fusion, I would definitely count on it, because I think that Goki is going to get a significant hit. And I think that maybe there could be like a Trickstar Light Stage hit or something like that that comes out of nowhere that nobody sees. And maybe that could put Trickstars back, you know, kind of in the pack. So you guys let me know what you think. Leave it in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching. As always, subscribe if you have not already, and turn on that notification bell for daily videos.